Well, hello, everyone. We are so happy to have you join us for a special Facebook Live helping your loved ones navigate the holidays with the Alliance for Eating Disorders Awareness. My name is Joanna Kiandel. I am the CEO and founder of the Alliance, and I am so excited to be spending this time with dear friends and colleagues and Alliance board members, Erica Waldron and Shireen Monarch. Thank you both so much for being here with us today for this very, very important live. Before we get started, I just want to take a moment to introduce both of you who are, to me, they're Alliance family members. They're folks that I love and support, and I consider myself so lucky to call my friends. So thank you both for being here. Erica Waldron, licensed mental health clinician, is the program director for Center for Discovery, the Palm Beach Gardens location. Erica, do you want to say a quick hello to our attendees?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here today and provide some support and feedback and just this open conversation too. So thanks, Joanna, for including me, and really excited to be here with Cherie too.
I thank you so much. It's so funny whenever I'm telling my team, that we're doing a live, and they're like, "Is Cherie going to be on?" So, you're definitely famous, obviously. And we just couldn't be happier to have, you, Erica, and Center for Discovery involved with this very important conversation this morning. So I don't really feel like Cherie needs much introduction because everybody knows Cherie already. But for those of you who don't, Cherie Monarch is a really parent advocate extraordinaire. She is one of the founders and moderators of the Mom to Mom conglomerate on Facebook, and a very, very important part of our Alliance board of directors as well as Erica. So Cherie, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I mean, this is such an important conversation and can be an incredibly challenging time for our families. And how do we navigate this with our holidays, with our loved ones? So I'm so glad that you're having this talk, and I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. For those of you who are tuning in, thank you for being here. We know what a stressful time this is. I mean, as if 2020 couldn't be any more stressful, right? Like, I actually was wearing a shirt on Saturday that was a literal picture of a dumpster fire, and it said 2020 underneath, and on the top it said "I'm fine," because I feel like that's how we're getting through this time. But we really wanted to give y'all an opportunity to ask some questions from our expert panel. So if at any point you have any questions whatsoever, if you want to ask questions for Cherie or to Erica, please go ahead and drop them in the chat section, in the comment section. But this is really going to be an opportunity for us to just have a general conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. So I think my first sort of thought out of the gate is, so many loved ones already feel like they walk on eggshells around their loved ones that are experiencing eating disorders. This is definitely a holiday that's, surrounded by food, by family, maybe a little different this year, but still there's going to be that that amount of just stress and triggers for your loved ones with eating disorders. So, Erica, I'm going to start with you. What are some things for families just to remember going into this holiday season? Just some thoughts and suggestions.
Sure. A couple things that come to mind is flexibility and setting up a game plan. Those are the two things off the bat that come to mind. So we, at least at our treatment center, helping the adolescents or adults practice that flexibility. And we know with the eating disorder, it can be so rigid, but helping that family to understand that there's going to be some things that come up, and figuring out using that toolbox. If your loved one has an outpatient team, or a higher level of care team, working with those providers of saying, okay, what's our game plan? What's the toolbox? What can we use for this day? I know it's going to be overwhelming. With that game plan is also sitting down and talking with their loved one about, okay, let's think about what today's going to bring, or what Thursday's going to bring, and what's going to be helpful for you. How can I support you? What are the cues? What are the signals that I can learn? Like maybe it's a word, maybe it's a key phrase, something that it's like, okay, let's change the subject. Let's, talk about how the leaves are, changing here in Florida, or it's still hot and we have the air conditioning on, whatever it is, that I think trying to keep it simple to some degree of, in my mind, like I said, that flexibility, as well as that game plan that everyone is on board for.
100%, Erica. Cherie, I know you have many thoughts around this holiday and navigating this holiday. And we're going to get into like specifics of what you can do. Navigating this journey with your loved one, what were you seeing like leading up to the holiday, like through the lens of your loved one? And were there certain things leading up to it that were helpful, or maybe that weren't so helpful?
Yeah, I think, depending where they're at in the journey, it can either be, complete terror and fear that Thanksgiving is approaching and this is a holiday that is so focused on the food, or it can be an opportunity. Hey, Thanksgiving last year was incredibly challenging and I'm in a better place this year. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to try to, sort of normalize this holiday and not stand in a place of fear. And, it's like everywhere you look is food, food, food. And for our loved ones that are experiencing an eating disorder, it's like they're literally sort of trapped in a hell, with this holiday. And the holidays really magnify the personal struggles of our loved ones. So as a family member, like Erica said, it really is having these conversations up front, like with the team, with the family, creating a solid game plan and really recognizing where your loved one is coming from and understanding, that this is terrifying for them. And so it's incredibly important that we be compassionate and validating and ask them, how can I support you? I can't even imagine how challenging this may be. And let me know how I can help. Let's figure out a plan. And I think just really understanding that perspective that, for the rest of us, oh, it's just Thanksgiving, we're going to have food. And, for our loved ones, oftentimes food is like putting a plate of tarantulas before an arachnophobe. And here they have they have a whole buffet of tarantulas. Yeah. And like, how do you navigate that? So really just understanding where they are and how you support them through that holiday.
Cherie, I think that's such an amazing example, and I think that for many individuals that are experiencing eating disorders, yes, it's very food centric, but it's also seeing people that they haven't seen in a while. It's also putting yourself in a place where you might not be able to, safeguard that conversation where, typically in the constructs of like your small pod on a day-to-day basis, if your loved one lives with you, you can navigate that. We're not going to talk about diet talk. We're not going to talk about weight. But then you open yourself up to this conversation where perhaps you haven't, like your loved ones haven't seen your loved one in an extended period of time. So it's like you're racking your brain. You're like, how am I going to censor what's going to be said? And I know that even with 2020, us having smaller Thanksgiving celebrations, hopefully and safely, a lot of folks I know are doing Zoom. So these comments. So Cherie, just wondering, how have you navigated the conversation around what other people are going to say to your loved one of, oh, you look so healthy, or have you like lost weight? Have you gained weight? Like so much like crap around the eating disorder.
Yeah, no, I really encourage families, like, if there's going to be an interaction with individuals outside your little pod, I encourage them to take this opportunity to really educate, friends and family about eating disorders, and, you know, share a couple videos, a couple articles, and discourage the talk of, you know, calories, food, fullness, overeating, you know, I'm stuffed, you know, and sort of a list of here's what you can say and here's what you can't say, because they kind of need that in black and white. And even with that, they're gonna forget it. So you have to be, that's where really that conversation comes, and being prepared that it's gonna happen. So how are we gonna navigate this? And, you know, oftentimes it happens at the dinner table. So we just have to sort of step in and redirect the conversation. Like, you know, can we please change the conversation to something more meaningful? Or, you know, let's not talk about diet and calories. Like, let's talk about what we're all grateful for. Or, you know, why don't each of us share something to really redirect the conversation? And because it's such a wasted, you know, effort to really talk about that when you don't get the opportunity to really connect with, you know, family members and friends, oftentimes except for this holiday. So let's talk about something really meaningful. And it's amazing, sometimes just that redirection can really bring great conversation, you know?
Yep, so true. One of the questions that we got prior to this live was, well, you know, family members want to know what they can say about seeing my loved one. Like, if I can't talk about, oh, you look so much better, right? And because we don't want to have that focused on like physicality, what are some compliments, if you will, or acknowledgments, Erica, that like someone can share to someone who's recovering from an eating disorder?
Yeah, so very much on the color of the clothes, of, you know, that purple on you brings out your eye color, or it could just be staying away from that body comment in general. It can be you know, tell me about school. I know you're in school, or maybe if they're taking a pause on school, maybe that might be a little too much or overwhelming. So thinking about if they have pets, or something that they really enjoy, or if it's a book that they're reading, you know that they're an avid reader, or love a specific show on Netflix, you know, talking about that. You don't have to stay surface level. A lot of the times when we're doing meal supports at the program, you know, oftentimes I get that feedback of like, I want to talk more than just like the weather or just like surface level. So it's like getting in deep a little bit to be like, oh, did you watch The Crown on Netflix? I've been watching that. Or I don't know, I'm not all caught up. I'm more of like a Bravo person. So if it's more like Bravo, I'm talking about that. But, you know, very much of like breaking that ice to that point of like, oh, what is someone going to say about how I look, to, oh my gosh, have you seen this show? The last time we talked about it was a while ago. Have you caught up? So I think that can really be beneficial for the loved one to take that anxiety off, because like Cherie was saying, they're already coming in with that level of fear and anxiety, not just around the food like we were talking about, but what the comments are going to be about, whether it's, oh, I'm so stuffed, like you were saying, Joe, or, you know, something along the lines of someone else's body, or a good food or bad food.
Go ahead, Cherie.
Yeah. No, and I think I love that, Erica. And I think it's recognizing too, for our loved ones, that the friends and family don't know what to say. Yeah. So have that conversation with your loved one. You know, friends and family are coming. You know, they may understand you've been experiencing an eating disorder, working on recovery, and they don't know what to say. So sometimes we have to help them out, like, you know, encourage the friends and family coming in to really approach your loved one from a place of connection. You know, I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you so much. Like, you know, and oftentimes, you know, take that opportunity to say, oh, I'm so great, happy to see you too. I don't know, if I've been working on this, this, and this, or I've taken up painting, or I've started photography. Do you want to see some of the pictures I've taken? And sort of invite them in, and because it's going to make the entire conversation much more comfortable. And it's actually going to act like a shield for your loved one, because you've started a conversation and brought up a topic that you're both not sitting there like, what do I say? What do I do? So and there was an article I posted today that Dr. Cindy Bulick wrote about Velcro comments. I don't know if you read that, but it was really a great article, and kind of, share that with friends and family that are coming in about, let's create connection rather than focusing on physicality, body shape, size, oh, I see you gained weight, or, oh, I see you're not doing any better. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things are just incredibly hurtful and can be Velcro comments. So just really helping them, hey, like, let me show you my paintings, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think, Cherie, like you were saying before, of like the topics around the dinner table, it can be so much more. I think what the eating disorder does, it takes away and kind of freezes everyone to like, what can I say? What can I say? Where it's beyond just the food, right? We know food's the nourishment, but there's so much more to us all than how we're nourishing our body. So my likes and interests might be similar or different, but we can talk about that and say, oh, I've been loving watching Hallmark Christmas movies, and they're so cheesy, but I absolutely love them. And this is my favorite one, and I can't wait for this one to come up. Whatever it is. And I think allowing ourselves not to just get to know our loved one who might be struggling, but allowing that conversation to happen, so they can also practice those questions and that conversation of saying, oh, tell me more. I haven't thought about that. That might be interesting to go painting, or to crochet, or whatever it might be.
One thing that I love so much about what both of you just shared is that you're really creating that your loved ones that are experiencing eating disorder are so much more than their eating disorder, right? We know that eating disorders are not someone's identity. Like, that's not who they are. It's what they're going through. And oftentimes, so often for the human that's going through it, it feels like their identity. And a lot of times for loved ones supporting them, that's really all they can see, because it's so monumental. And these conversations that both of you have shared about, like painting or shows or other things, it just sort of proves to them and to the loved ones that they are not their disease. It's what they may be going through at the moment, but that is not defining who they are. And I think that's so, so, so important. And speaking to that, I got a question in the comments. Cherie, can you elaborate more of what Velcro comments are? I don't know if you can just a little bit more about that.
So Velcro comments are comments that, offhanded comments that people make to you about your physicality, that, your shape, your size, your weight, that actually stick with you for a very long time, or the rest of your life. And I'm certain all of us have experienced a comment by someone that may not intentionally have been hurtful, but I mean, it just went right to the core. And you think back and you know exactly what you were wearing, where you were, like what was happening, and the exact words. And you literally just cannot peel them off of you, and they're stuck to you like Velcro. And it's such a great perspective to think of, is this comment helpful, or is it hurtful? And it really redirects us, like I said, to really connect from a connection standpoint, in a relational standpoint, rather than physicality.
100%. And what we'll do is we'll make sure to find the article that you posted, and we'll put it in the comments so folks can read it also, because I think we love Cindy Bulick here, and would love to get that out. Another question that came in, and actually brings me to my next point, or for both of you, what are some great coping tools for the day of? So some strategies to go into the actual holiday. So I don't know if Erica, you want to start, and then Cherie, I will first share that, and we've had a few comments already, is that, it seems like when you're early in recovery or in the recovery process and you go into a holiday like
Did Joe freeze? Well, I can jump in until comes back. So what comes to mind, I love DBT skills. So I'm very much of, that DBT person of like mindfulness and staying grounded. So I think working together as the family to do grounding work, whether it's a guided meditation or depending on where that person might be in recovery, whether it's doing like chair yoga or yoga itself, something that like the family can kind of do together, and building off kind of throughout the day. So whether for that person, it's checking the facts and really challenging some of those eating disorder thoughts, if they need to writing it down and kind of getting it out of their minds, but also thinking to how the loved one can be supported. And then during the meal, I think for the most part, their outpatient team, or if they're in a higher level of care, they're going to talk about, okay, what tools are going to be helpful for you to, one, get through the day, but mainly during the meal, where having that conversation, I think, from the team and the loved ones and the family members are going to be so helpful. And I think it's really important to know for the family members, or if it's extended family, that they don't have to be the food police, that the person that is working on their recovery and in this process, they're accountable for how they're going to nourish their body. And it's already a stressful day. So providing that support to say, I know different times throughout the day are going to be more anxiety provoking, or you can tell me how you might be feeling, or you may not be able to communicate how you're feeling, and that's okay. And know that I'm here to support you, however that might look like, but kind of taking that stress off of that parent or that extended family member of like, oh, they didn't complete the whole meal. And it's like, that's that accountability that we're teaching. And it's identifying to say, okay, well then when they're with their therapist or dietitian afterwards, they can kind of dive into more of like what was coming up and what tools can you use the next time, and how can we challenge the eating disorder.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we lost Joanna. I got a message.
Yeah, I'm gonna text her back while you chat.
And that's so great what you just shared, Erica. And as family and loved one, it's so important that we encourage and plan a game plan. There has to be a game plan. And so really, like you said, plan other activities and distractions. Like in our family, we play poker and we play dominoes and, do Scrabble and all these different things that really encourage interaction and keep the distraction off the food. And it creates connection, and, you're building quality time and stuff like that. And then really, planning ahead of time, like plan the meal before the event, like get with your team, or if you're doing FBT, get together with your loved one and say, okay, these are the foods that are going to be there. And these are the foods that you're going to eat. So have it all worked out ahead of time about what that's going to look like, because approaching a buffet can be incredibly overwhelming for our loved ones navigating an eating disorder. And I also recommend that your loved one not go first, because then all eyes are on them as they're going through the buffet. Okay, are they going to eat? Are they not going to eat? Depending on what their eating disorder is, and really sandwiching them in the middle where no one's paying attention. There's pre-planned. They're going to get these foods. They're able to dish them up without distress because it's all been planned ahead of time. And so really doing those things. And, you know, of course, and I always love the buddy system. Like, that's so important, is you have a buddy for the day for your loved one. And I recommend that it not be the host or hostess, you know, or the chef, because they're distracted hosting, cooking, all that stuff. So maybe it's a sibling or an aunt or uncle or something where, you know, you create a plan ahead of time that you're my buddy for the day, and you may need to run interference with me and you're going to sit next to me at the table. And if I squeeze your hand, or if I say the word like magnolia or something like that, word, you know, to either intervene or get me out of there. You know what I mean? And sometimes it may just be simply like saying, hey, you know, Susie, can you walk outside with me for a second? There's something I want to show you. And really rescuing them from that situation. And of course, this also means like where they're at in the journey, because as we all know, our loved ones have to learn to navigate these situations, and they have to build up that resilience. So if they've been working on recovery, maybe Thanksgiving is an opportunity for them to walk through that situation themselves and use their tools like you were sharing to navigate through it without someone having to rescue them or be a buffer. You know, so depending where you're at in recovery, Thanksgiving can be an amazing opportunity to really do some great work to, you know, to see where you need more support. You know? So
I love the buddy system idea. And it's so true. And it's so helpful, because for your loved one, allowing them to identify who the buddy is, because it's that trusted source that person either knows to some degree about the eating disorder, or maybe it's a little kid. Like my 1-year-old could be, welcome back, Joe. We were talking about the buddy system, and I was just saying, like, maybe my 1-year-old could be, you know, a buddy for someone where, you know, she's going to just play with her toys and have fun and, you know, laugh and clap and kind of do whatever, and kind of take that person out of the eating disorder spiral that's happening inside their minds, where it can be kind of that both sides of like, oh, Angela needs to go outside and play with the leaves. Okay, I'll be right back. See you later. You know, whatever it might be. So I was just saying that I love the body system and having that support. And I think now it's so different with obviously COVID and virtually going, or I guess going to Thanksgiving lunch or dinner where we're kind of virtual, where if you are in person, I agree with Cherie, you know, setting yourself up or telling the host or whoever it is to kind of sandwich yourself around the people that are more supportive for you, and leave, you know, Uncle so-and-so or grandma, whoever, down at the other end where you really don't hear their comments, or you can be caught up in conversation around those supporters.
So one of the things I wanted to just throw in there is like literally what just happened is our internet just went down at the office. I mean, you can't make this up. And so what it had me lean into was radical acceptance that that's going to happen. I mean, this is a sign of like, and if any of y'all know me, y'all know that this is not okay with me, like literally like you know, but I think that that's also going into the Thanksgiving, you know, experience or holiday experience in general, is that things are going to happen. And I think that that is such like a beautiful example that things will happen. And this concept of radical acceptance is, okay, when things are going awry, what are things that I can do to, number one, ground, or what are things that I can do in the moment to take care of myself and to take care of your loved ones? So in the vein, and I do have a few more questions that I would love to get to. And if you did talk about it already, then you can just tell me to move on.
We talked about a lot, Joe. We talked some like DBT skills too. Awesome. What else? Sheree talking about kind of sandwiching the loved one into like the middle of the buffet instead of like starting out. And
that's so great. That's so great.
There were so many other things that were so great that Sheree mentioned. So you just tell us and I'll tell you if we talked about it.
Definitely. And I can't wait to go back and watch what I missed, because this is such an important conversation. But what do you do in moments where, because you can safeguard all of it, right? You can do all of the things that you talked about, but what do you do in the moments where, as a loved one, you see it happening? What do you do in those moments?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about this, like redirecting the conversation and just flat out saying, you know what, like, this isn't, you can just flat out say, you know what, can we change the topic? Let's change the conversation because this is really challenging, and just end it. You know what I mean? Or encourage your loved one to step outside. Hey, I want to step away for a second. Like, Susie, come with me. Let's step outside for a second. And instantly, but don't be afraid. There are no rules. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to be like aggressive. It can just simply be, you know what, like, this is a really challenging conversation, and it would be great if we just really change the topic and, start something else. And, kind of the beautiful thing about COVID this year is it has given us permission to break all the rules. You know what I mean? So sure. We don't have to have Thanksgiving with all of our extended family and friends. I mean, if your loved one is at a place where nourishing is incredibly challenging, even the simplest of foods, make it just your small little intimate family. Maybe you go outside and have a picnic that day, or, something totally different, and you change it up, and maybe you don't have Thanksgiving foods at all this year. Maybe you have just a bunch of appetizers and you play games all day and really take the focus off the food, because there isn't anything that has to be, you know what I mean? And sometimes it means we change our expectations. Yeah. And that's the great thing about pandemic, is we've had to change our expectations on everything.
Right. And I think what you just so beautifully said is that I think we have to let go of the expectations that it's going to be perfect. Right. And I mean, I planned so much for this conversation, and the one thing that I did not plan for is for the internet to go out. And, I had to have faith that I have two phenomenal speakers that are able to continue the conversation, which is so, so, so important. So I think that giving yourselves grace and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, and just if something goes a little not in that manner, it doesn't mean that the whole thing, like, there's several beautiful like analogies that we use in our individual groups. Like, if you drop your phone and there's a crack in it, you don't continue to keep on like stomping on it, right? You pick it up and you keep on moving. Or if you burn a piece of toast in the toaster, you're not going to continue to burn the house down, right? Like, and so remembering that there's going to need to be fluidity, flexibility, and just as your loved ones that are experiencing the eating disorder are going to have to navigate with walking away from perfection, us as loved ones too have to continue continue to keep on moving forward. I do want to bring up a question that we got several days ago, is what happens if you have a loved one, if you have a loved one who's experiencing an eating disorder come home? Maybe they've been away at school, or they've been and when you see them, there's just a big difference. They're looking a lot more compromised. How do you navigate that, like specifically with your loved one? Erica, do you want to start first, and then Sheree, we can have you answer as well?
Yeah, sure. I think it's having that conversation. I'm assuming, I guess I can kind of talk on both ends of the spectrum, meaning like if they have a team and if they don't have a team, because that's kind of where my mind goes. So, you know, if they don't have a team, having and allowing that open conversation to say, you know, tell me how school was. Tell me what it was like being at school. I'm a little concerned based off of some of the maybe behaviors that you've seen, right? Staying away from like how you look. And, you know, let's talk about how we can maybe navigate some help and some support, as well as like figuring out what's going to be helpful and supportive for you over the next couple of days. If they do have a team, then talking about this with the team, because I think it's similar to what we mentioned before. The team has talked about what the plan is, and hopefully if this is an adolescent or even a college age student, that they're going to have you a part of that as well. But having that conversation to say, hey, I'm concerned. Can you give me a little insight of what's going on before I approach, and tell me what are the things that they're struggling with, so I don't assume. I just don't jump into that assumption that something's right or something's wrong. But I think starting there, that openness and willingness to say, I'm here for you, I'm concerned for you, and I definitely want to make sure that we can provide some level of support. I know it's really tough, and I think with COVID and what's been going on, I know for us, we're definitely seeing higher acuity than what we've seen in the past. I was talking to someone from one of the insurance companies, and I was saying, I was like, honestly, where we were at a year plus ago, and what we saw is like the so to speak, like criteria for the different levels, it's not even close to what we're seeing now. And I think there's many factors with that. I know I'm kind of going off a little bit, but I think if you as the family member are seeing someone or seeing something in your loved one, and something's not sitting right, or you have questions about it, I think that's amazing as kind of that front line to say, what's going on? Let me figure out what those next steps are, and, you know, reaching out to the Alliance and to you guys.
Sure. Sheree?
Yeah, no, I think it really depends on, you know, if they went to college and they've experienced an eating disorder in the past, and you're witnessing, okay, they've gone to college and they've decompensated. So that conversation looks different than if they've gone to college and they didn't have an eating disorder that you were aware of, and they're coming home and you start noticing things. And I think the first couple of days are kind of information gathering. You know what I mean? That, okay, you know, you're sort of checking in and seeing, okay, what's happening? What are the changes? What's going on? And then really have that conversation with them. Or, I'm noticing, I'm concerned, you know, I'm worried, like, how can I support you? And really supporting them to get professional help if they're not. And if they are, you know what, we need to check in with your team, because, you know, you need and deserve more support and care. And, you know, as your mom and your family member, it's my job to keep you safe and well, and because I love you, so I can't stand in silence. So let's reach out and get you that support. And so I think it looks different, you know, whether this is something that's new or something that's ongoing. And the fact is, this happens to families all the time. And families are paralyzed because they're walking on eggshells. They don't know what to say. And when we say nothing, it's important to understand that the message our loved one receives is they're not sick. You know, if I were really sick or something were really wrong, mom and dad would have said something. And I wouldn't have come home and gone back to college and no one said a word. And meanwhile, the family's suffocating because they're like, having a coronary and can't breathe because, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. And open conversation and complete transparency is so important. And it tells your loved one, I love you. I care about you. I'm standing by your side and I'm here to support you, just like you would if it were cancer or a heart condition or anything like that. If you noticed, certain signs and symptoms of decompensation, you would be checking in, you'd be having the conversation, and you would be encouraging and mandating that they get the support and care that they need and deserve. And and it can be the most loving conversation. It doesn't have to be aggressive. And, as you know, for me, I can be very, very aggressive. So I had to learn to hold compassion and say to myself, okay, if this were cancer, what would I be saying right now? What would be my words? What would be my tone of voice? And it would start out, honey, I'm really concerned. I'm seeing signs that, maybe indicating that your cancer's returning, and I want to check in with you, so really just a different conversation.
And I think just to add one quick thing to both of your amazing shares is, one of the things that I wanted so badly when I was experiencing my eating disorder was someone to validate how crappy it was that I was going through this. We know that eating disorders are not a disorder of choice, right? Like just how you talk about cancer, Cherie, I never chose to have my eating disorder. And I wanted my loved ones so badly to say, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. It really sucks. And I love you, and I want to align with you. I think just hearing that validation, that specific, I'm really sorry you're going through this, because I don't know, I probably wouldn't be open to help at that point. I want to be very clear, but just hearing that someone could validate how difficult it is to experience an eating disorder. And I also want to just say how difficult it is to be a loved one of someone that's going through disorder, because I have been in that place of being on both sides of that coin, and it's just altogether terrible and awful. And that's why we have forums like this. That's why we have groups like the Alliances group or the Mom to Mom group, and treatment centers like Center for Discovery, because we know with access to care, people actually do get better. And don't get me started on that whole access to care thing, because that'll be a whole other Facebook Live, right? Treatment is a necessity. It should not be a luxury. I know that we're starting to end on time. I do want to just also, there's been a few questions about, what about, individuals that are experiencing bulimia nervosa or binge eating disorder, if there's specific supports for that. I will tell you, as someone who experienced both of them, for me, having accountability was really big for me on just, holidays or big holiday gatherings, having an accountability partner. And I know that you both talked about it during the time where, the internet decided that I shouldn't be on it. But for me, it was, planning on, after, having a meal is, planning out, this was going to be my person that I was going to spend some time with. So I knew that I couldn't engage, in behaviors, for example. When I was experiencing binge eating disorder, specifically around planning ahead of time, with my dietitian, realizing that it was just another time, another meal. I think that I made it up to be so big that I sort of set myself up for failure from moment one. Exactly. So I think that remembering that, and that accountability doesn't have to be a person in the physical room. One of the things that this pandemic has showed us is that we can absolutely get support virtually through phone. So having that person, that you can text with and say, I really want to act out in urges right now, exactly sort of that. Anything else that you could think of, Erica, for your loved one that may be experiencing, whether it's having, and let me say, all eating disorders are restrictive behaviors. So let's just put that out there. Binge eating disorder is a restrictive behavior. Cherise Turner talks a lot about that. But, helping your loved one navigate all types of eating disorders.
Yeah. Well, I think great minds think alike, because you definitely shared what I was thinking in terms of nourishing your body throughout the day, like any other day, and having that loved one work with their team. You know, if Thanksgiving dinner is at 2 o'clock, you know, how do you nourish your body where you're not missing components or meals earlier in the day that could lead to other behaviors later on. Having that accountability body to check in, and also knowing to stay in the moment. I know we've talked about some of those DBT skills, but staying present and connected, engaged in the conversation, and practicing as much as you can throughout the day, and taking moment by moment, and trying not to get too far ahead.
Sheree, I'm not sure if you wanted to add to that.
No, I think, you know, like you said, that accountability partner, whether it's in person or virtually, and having that plan, have the conversations ahead of time that, you know, if I have, you know, certain urges or, you know, whatever is happening, like, help me through this moment, you know, have those skills, have those tools, and start using them, and be mindful of the things, like, for example, time for all of our loved ones. You know, it's like, you know, Thanksgiving, oftentimes everything goes to the wind, and we don't nourish our body regularly like we should be doing. And it's all focused on this certain time, but then people are late, and, you know, all of a sudden a meal that was supposed to be at noon is being pushed off at 3. So having those plans in place that, in spite of everything else that's happening, I'm taking care of me. And I'm going to meet my needs, and I'm going to nourish my body, and it's going to happen, you know, as it's scheduled to be, you know, 6 times a day or whatever is supposed to be happening. And I'm taking care of me, you know, and I'm not going to, you know, not give myself the nutrition I need just because dinner is delayed or people are delayed, because that is also learning the skills to do life. And life is completely unexpected, always. And it's always a changing schedule. So we have to do those things to keep ourselves safe. And it's just like we talk about, if you're a diabetic, like giving the insulin, or, you know, a heart patient taking your heart meds, like, it's the exact same thing. Is we have to continue to do the things that keep ourselves well.
Yeah. And you both hit like the nail on the head so much, is I think remembering, and this was the hardest part for me, and it's been talked about in the comments a lot, is I think we need to remember this is just another day. Even though it's so hyped up, it is another day. And so do the things that you need to do like it was any other day. Lean into your team. They are they're going to be the key. Is, you know, like for me, it was like, it was literally just another day. I have to like follow the plan that my dietitian and I had come up with, and like literally just do it. And, you know, I think this is where it gets a little individualized with specifics, but like I knew that, you know, certain things were, you know, we're like, okay, well, I can't do this right now. And then maybe this is not right for me. But the worst thing that could happen was, you know, for me to, you know, have this idea of like setting myself to fail, which for me would be setting myself up to restrict, which would lead to binging, which would lead to fear. Like it was just so much of that. So I think what you both said is it's just another day. And the more that you can make it part of your schedule that feels safe, bring it to basics. That's what I will tell people all the time. When it feels like the world is on fire, go back to basics. So I love that you both shared that. We are over time, but I do want to just ask each of you one more thing, you know, and then we'll wrap it up. But you know, I think one of the things to remember is really, which has been helpful for me, and I'm interested in your view, Erica, as a clinician and Sheree as a family member, is peeling the layers back and sort of leaning into the meaning of holidays, I think has been really, really important. So are there any particular tools or experiences, Erica, that you've done with your team in preparing that it's far beyond just a meal and like really like leaning into the meaning behind it?
Yeah, you know, especially around different holiday times, we'll do different exposures. One, you know, we'll do a Thanksgiving exposure as a preparation, just with the food alone. But we really get into what we're thankful for, what we're grateful for, and doing some of that. Art like therapy to have everyone think about what we are grateful for. I think that's so important. I agree with what Cherie was saying earlier in this conversation of how that topic can be so veered away and so focused on the food when it's really about what we are grateful and thankful for, and being able to connect to that. And that's where I even encourage the loved ones who are struggling to bring that up, to say, you know what, this is what I identified as what I'm thankful and grateful for. And I think it's really important to be able to share that.
Cherie?
Yeah, no, I think it's, you know, like you both said, food is not the reason for the season. It's not the reason for the celebration. And the holiday is here to remember to celebrate family and gratitude and blessings, and really remember what is truly important in life. And food is just one of the tools that we use to celebrate, but it's not the reason. And because we all have to nourish our bodies. So it's part of it, because we have to nourish our bodies. But food is not the reason we're there. So I think it's really standing in a place of gratitude and remembering why we're all there, and that we're there to connect with family and to connect with friends and to remember and, you know, and make it about all the blessings. And this year we can talk about all the craziness of 2020, but it's really about connection. That's what it's all about. Is building connection and love and relationships. And so I think it's so important to remember that. And I think we all have to remember to laugh. I think we just forget to laugh sometimes. So, you know, sort of stepping back, and even, you know, sometimes you can target someone in your family that's really funny to, like, hey, you know what, let's make it lighter today. And why don't you share, you know, some funny stories or dog stories or whatever, you know, something. But it's all about connection.
Yeah, 100%. And realizing that, you know, just want to say that, you know, it doesn't matter who your pod is. You know, for some folks, it's their family. For some folks, for some people, it's their friends. You know, it's giving yourself permission to reach out, giving yourself permission to be present. And I want to be very, very direct of how hard that can be when you are in the midst of the eating disorder. Despite what the crappy committee between your ears is telling you, you do deserve that, you know? And again, it's, for me, leaning into gratitude during my struggle was really hard, you know, because I couldn't see it. But even starting to write like a gratitude list of maybe one thing, maybe it's your four-legged friend who you're most grateful for. You know, it's, you know, we have such a beautiful family here at the Alliance, you know, some people, some of our team members who have, like, you know, recovered to be a good aunt, or to, you know, those are the things, those are what we have to lean into. And it's okay if you only have one thing on your list. I promise you, give yourself that opportunity and permission to grow it. More than anything, we want to share that you are not alone. You know, the Alliance is here to support you. That's what we do through all of our various free weekly therapist-led support groups. We actually now have 4 main ones, and then we have our mom-to-mom weekly group as well. So for individuals that are experiencing eating disorders that are 18 and older, we meet on Monday evenings at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have our friends and family loved ones support group every Wednesday from 7:00 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have our brand new amazing LGBTQ plus group that meets weekly on Wednesday evenings at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are also doing a special Instagram live tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are someone, or if your loved ones that are experiencing an eating disorder, so please make sure to check us out. If there's anything that we can do to support you on your journey, connecting to any level of care from outpatient to acute medical stabilization, please give us a call. We have 2 phenomenal humans that are on the phone that can help navigate you, as well as our Find ED Help referral site. I'm really so grateful to both of you, excuse me, especially when you know that if the internet is going to go out, the 2 people that you want to continue to steer the ship are the both of you. This has been so extraordinary, so helpful. We've gotten so many comments. I cannot thank you both enough. Just want to remind our loved ones that you may be going through hell, but just know that continue to put one foot in front of the other. And also don't forget to fill your cup as well, because you need to fill your cup. As a loved one, if you are not on the mom-to-mom or man-to-man community, please join. It is such a wealth of information. It's such a huge, huge asset. And of course, any questions about Center for Discovery, please go ahead and reach out to Center for Discovery. Erica, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I am just so grateful for this conversation. I think it's so needed, especially as the holidays approach. So, have those conversations, allow yourselves to kind of take that step back and provide support, and, rely on the team if your family has a team. And take one day and one moment at a time.
Absolutely. Cherie?
Absolutely. No, the holidays, I think it's just important to understand that your loved one is navigating an illness they didn't choose. And they're oftentimes in a living hell. So really understanding that. And it's important to understand that you didn't choose it either. And that our loved ones don't come with a handbook on how to support me to heal from my eating disorder. So, encourage your loved one to get support. Ask your loved one for how you can support them. And to the loved ones, I say, ask your family for what you need, because they're standing there and they often don't know what you need or how to support you. And they're struggling because they love you so much and they want to make this journey easier. And they want to walk by your side and hold your hand. And they need to know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's so important for conversation and all of us to be able to ask for what we need.
So true. Thank you so much, Cherie, Erica. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of you for being part of our conversation, and for sticking with us even when the intention of perfect is not so perfect. So please know that you're not alone, that we're here. Help is available, recovery is possible. Please be safe, please take care of yourself, and have a very happy, healthy, and wonderful holiday. And we'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.